The Arab Spring is obviously very important, but we can compare some of those lessons to sort of a brief overview of two important recent social movements that have happened in the United States. First, something that some people would consider a social movement and other people might disagree, but the early Tea Party, by most accounts, was a social movement. It was a group brought together based on a shared grievance, organizing for actually a number of different reasons in a number of different parts of the country. Most people would agree that fairly early on it was co-opted, and for those early Tea Party supporters, most of them really liked the direction that it went. Co-optation meant that the main ideas of the Tea Party were then organized into traditional party politics. Part of the Republican Party today, without a doubt, is controlled by members that would be considered Tea Partyists. And so the idea is that the early Tea Party organized and then ultimately coalesced around trying to affect decisions happening here in Washington, D.C. What's notable is the difference between the early Tea Party eventually being co-opted and then having a great impact on politics in Washington, D.C. for better or for worse, depending on your position. When we compare that to the Occupy movement, the Occupy movement grew very, very quickly out of the activities that occurred at Zuccotti Park, this one square block in Lower Manhattan, and Occupy movement spread around the country. They remained a very, very horizontal power structure with no hierarchy by design, and ultimately Occupy Chicago, Occupy LA, Occupy every place started to happen all across the country. And while there was a unified sense of shared grievance, there was not this unification of message, unification of goals, and ultimately there wasn't a clear priority set in terms of moving their political agenda forward. And so the ultimate impact was probably thought of as being much less than the Tea Party, but it did avoid that co-optation that obviously did happen with the Tea Party. So it's interesting to compare these two. As we move forward, we're going to bring these ideas into class and ultimately compare what we saw in terms of online organizing and online connections to what happened traditionally with offline, very geographically based organizing like we saw in the civil rights movement. And this is what Malcolm Gladwell talks about with the difference between weak ties and strong ties, and why they are, in his mind, not at all the same, and ultimately strong ties are much more powerful in creating actual change. We will bring that discussion into class this week, and we'll see where it goes.